I want to go to a conversation that was talked about throughout this week because Aditi Kinkhabwala was on with Ken and Lama yesterday, but before she was on with Ken and Lama yesterday, she was on her sister station in Pittsburgh talking about their former quarterback, now former Cleveland Browns quarterback, at least for a short period of time, and now, I always want to say Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders quarterback, Kenny Pickett, and how apparently there's other teams around the league that really like Kenny Pickett, and I just can't wrap my head around this clip right here.
Who do you think has a better chance of being an NFL starting quarterback, Kenny Pickett or Shedeur Sanders? What would you say?
Kenny Pickett.
So then why keep Sanders over Pickett?
I can tell you, I don't want to insult anybody, but I can name starting quarterbacks in the current National Football League whose coaches have told me that Kenny Pickett is better than the guy that they are starting.
Okay, but why keep Sanders over Pickett then?
Because you used a draft pick on him. We've seen plenty of teams cut draft picks that they just drafted. There are plenty of questions associated with why you would draft a quarterback just 2 rounds after a quarterback that you very clearly liked so much, but that's what they did. And Andrew Berry is someone who has not been known to cut loose a guy that he just drafted. And so there you are. And now the development of these quarterbacks becomes yet another thing that Kevin Stefanski has to figure out and deal with amidst massive circus that surrounds anything and everything related to Shedeur Sanders.
That clip from 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh, our sister station. I just don't understand. Listen, and this is nothing against Aditi, because I think Aditi is as tapped in as anybody. She does a very, very tremendous job as the sideline person throughout the season. I love her work. I'm a fan of her work. But I just thought, like, this report specifically, I couldn't wrap my head around, because here's the thing, and even if you want to apply the logic of like, well, yeah, there's other quarterbacks out there that teams are starting that they'd rather have Kenny Pickett, but they drafted the guy that they're starting, so they have to sort of see it through. I can understand that, but here's the thing. Like, if so many other coaches and so many other teams were like clamoring for Kenny Pickett, why wasn't there, like, why were the Browns going to keep Kenny Pickett up until like the 11th hour of Tuesday? And then the Raiders desperately needed somebody because Aiden O'Connell got hurt, and they were the ones that swung a trade. Like, it wouldn't have taken that to move Kenny Pickett and they wouldn't have been so stuck in we're going to keep 4 if there was all this traction about Kenny Pickett being this great player that everybody wanted. It cost you a 5th round pick. Like, it's a day 3 pick. I know that all these teams and all that like value their picks for sure, but if there's a team out there that's like, hey, you know what? We think Kenny Pickett's better than the guy that we're starting, I think they would have been willing to give up a 5th round pick for a guy that they thought could run their offense and be better and more effectively help them win football games over the guy that they're playing if this was true. I just don't buy this.
Well, first off, like, the first question is, who the hell is thinking that Kenny Pickett, coming off a hamstring injury where he played 4 training camp practices, that's better than our starting quarterback? Like, what a shot at Spencer Rattler. But other than that, like, I don't know anybody else in the NFL that's like, yeah, that's my guy who hasn't started in 2 years and has been injured. Secondly, were you not surprised that they got a 5th round pick for him? Like, his value was in the absolute gutter.
Well, I wonder if he had played in the preseason, like, looked halfway decent, if they could have. That's the biggest, like, what if here, right? Is if he had played in the preseason and looked good, and the Browns were just like, yeah, we think Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur are just fine, we're going to keep them, and they were willing to trade him, could they have gotten like a 4th round pick for him?
If he had played, of course, yeah, I think so, and looked not, halfway decent, like not put together a DTR performance. But like you mentioned, like, the Browns are so analytically driven that they see these quarterbacks as currency. That's probably why they took 2. Like, take 2 or take 1 every year, even if you have a franchise guy. So when they were going in, even though they were telling us they were so hell-bent on having 4 quarterbacks heading into the year, they are trade capital. And that's what it looked like. So I'm like, what would a bidding war for Kenny Pickett have looked like? I would argue that maybe there even was a bidding war for Kenny Pickett, and a 5th round pick was all you were going to get for him.
You think so? You think other teams were calling?
I just was baffled that they got a 5th round pick for him. I really thought that his stock was so low that it was going to be a conditional 6th round pick.
Well, I definitely felt like that was part of the reason why they were keeping him, was They liked Kenny because we had heard that throughout the offseason. And maybe they embellished that a little bit to try to entice people like, hey, we really like this guy, so we're okay keeping him. Like, that could have been part of it here. But it literally took the Raiders losing Aiden O'Connell for 8 weeks or whatever it's going to be for a team to finally call up and pull the trigger and do this. Because the Saints, I had talked about, and my guy Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints, I had talked to him multiple times about the idea that maybe the Saints are the place that makes sense for Kenny Pickett because they have a very, very, very young quarterback room, and if Kellen Moore's there, he was in Philly last year. The connection made 100% sense. And maybe that's who she's talking about when it comes to we like Kenny Pickett more than the guy that we're starting. They just didn't want to give up a draft pick for him maybe. But that's my point is if you really felt that strongly about Kenny Pickett, you would have been willing to make the trade, especially what does Kellen Moore owe Spencer Rattler, who's not his draft pick at all? He may owe Tyler Shuck something because they drafted him this year, but he doesn't owe Spencer Rattler anything. You could have traded for Kenny Pickett and been we're going to start this guy because we think he gives us a better. You could do the same thing the Browns are doing, which is we have a guy here that we think is going to give us a good chance to win, but secretly, we know we're rebuilding our roster and that we're not going to be very good this year. That's what the Browns are basically doing. But also, I'm not mad they traded Kenny. By the way, that's not even the point. I'm okay they traded Kenny. I thought they should have traded Kenny from the beginning. That was always the guy I thought was going to be the odd man out. I just found this report from Aditi patently ridiculous because I was if there's that many teams that are desperate for Kenny Pickett, then it wouldn't have taken the Raiders losing Aiden O'Connell to necessitate or facilitate a trade the day before cutdown day that you basically just replenish the pick that you lost and you got a good pick back because the Raiders are going to be bad this year. I'm anticipating, and so you're going to get a better pick than what you traded away, and you basically it's a wash in the trade. You traded DTR for Kenny Pickett essentially, and you just swap picks whatever. So I don't have a problem that they did it. I just was confused as to why, if this is how teams apparently feel, there wasn't more of a actual bidding war going on and more teams calling, because it didn't seem like there was really anybody else calling.
Do you think the Browns think that? Do you think the Browns think that Kenny Pickett is an NFL caliber starter?
I do think they thought that he could have been. I think they wanted this competition to be him and Joe Flacco. That's what it felt like. Everything that we heard, everything that we were told, they basically wanted it. They framed it as a four-way competition. It was a two-way competition.
Yeah.
It was Flacco and Pickett, and those two were competing for the starting job, and the other two rookies were competing for the backup job. We know that now. But I think they really wanted Kenny Pickett to stay healthy and see if he could push Joe Flacco and actually win the job. I do believe
so. If you went through all the hassle of trading away DTR and a fifth-round pick to get him, I know he wasn't healthy, but if you feel like he's an NFL caliber quarterback, and you are, at least in theory, front-facing, trying to win at the beginning of the year, why not keep him around? Why not make Shedeur Sanders the trade piece? Why not make Dylan Gabriel the trade piece? Why give up on a guy that around the NFL, apparently, according to Aditi Kinkawala, is an NFL caliber quarterback that other teams were clamoring at the bit for? Why not keep him around?
I think because they liked what they saw from Dylan Gabriel enough that they were let's do. But honestly, though, to your point, what I found the most interesting about, because I was convinced, and I do think the plan was to keep 4 until the Raiders called. I do believe that.
Oh, because God forbid we pass up on a fifth-round pick.
Well, but you know how this team is. It's the same reason why last week when Earl and I were talking about the possibilities that Shedeur Sanders was auditioning in front of the Rams for a potential trade scenario, it's the same reason why I thought that was a possibility. Because if this team can take a player and either get the exact value back in a pick that they sent away for that guy, or increase the value. If Shedeur Sanders had played well last week and some team came calling and was we'll give you a third-round pick for Shedeur Sanders, you bet your ass Andrew Berry would have said yes.
Yeah.
Because that's increasing the round that you drafted him by 2 full rounds of picks for a team that's trying to rebuild. So it's the same reason why, that's why the Kenny Pickett thing makes sense to me. They traded a 5th-round pick for him. They were we're not going to trade him. We're going to keep 4, because that was honestly part of one of the biggest reasons why I don't think they wanted to trade him initially, was if they're not going to get the value back if they're only going to get like a 7th round pick for him, they wouldn't trade him because they're like, well, we don't think that's worth it to us. We gave up a 5th for him. But it was the fact that they were going to replenish the 5th that they lost that I think was what was enticing to them, and that's why they ended up trading him. But I do think on some level, like, they were comfortable with this because of what the rookie showed you in the preseason. They obviously really liked Dylan Gabriel, and I think you saw in both games, even though the first game didn't go as well with the 2 turnovers, that he can run the offense efficiently. What I found interesting, though, was 2 years ago, they did this exact same thing. They traded away Josh Dobbs right after training camp, banked on, well, hey, DTR, he was awesome during training camp in the preseason, and then it kind of backfired on him in the regular season once Deshaun got hurt because they didn't actually have like the depth at the backup quarterback spot that they wanted, which is a position that Andrew Berry has said they put a high value on.
Yeah, so everybody's going to be real sorry if that situation pops up again where Joe Flacco turns into a 40-year-old quarterback because he is, and, I don't know, pulls a hammy trying to get out of a play.
Maybe that's why Bailey Zappi's here.
Well, then keep around Kenny Pickett, the guy you traded for. We don't need to pile off the scrap heap for the guy.
I'm not expecting anything from Bailey Zappi, by the way.
Neither am I, but I would have expected something from Kenny Pickett if you would have kept him around.
So you're a Kenny Pickett guy. Is that
I'm
what
not
I'm
a Kenny Pickett guy. But if this report is true, which I have every reason to believe that it is, that he's an NFL, that people around the league believe he's an NFL starting quarterback, unless the Browns just believe once again that they're the smartest guys in the room and they know for sure he's not a starting NFL quarterback, then keep his ass around.
Well, but this all feeds into why I just didn't understand this report from Aditi. Like, why I can't wrap my head around it.
It just had to be Spencer Rattler.
Because, but I mean, maybe she used it in a plural form, but it really was just like one team, and it was the Saints saying that because I just can't. I don't understand how there's all these teams out there that apparently thought Kenny Pickett was a better option than the guy that they're starting at quarterback right now. But the only team that came calling at the 11th hour after the final preseason game because of an injury was the Raiders. That was it. Yep. And the only offer you got was a 5th-round pick. Because if they had gotten a higher offer, they obviously would have taken the higher offer.
Why not keep him around? Why not keep him around, the first couple of weeks of the season and, oh, wow, that guy wherever went down.
To your point, though, that would have, if that would have made more sense because it's like, okay, maybe the value wasn't there right now because there's not a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. There's not a lot of injuries right now. It would have made more sense to keep them and then hope that some team gets really desperate by the trade deadline or before the trade deadline. They're like, now we need Kenny Pickett. And then maybe you could have gotten more for him. But this just, again, feeds into why I'm like, I don't really think there was really this big clamoring over Kenny Pickett. I don't think it's that big of a deal that he's not here. I don't think it's that big of a deal that some other teams I don't think that the rapport or the hand-wringing that Aditi is claiming is there, I just don't really think is there, is my point on this. And I don't think it was there with the Browns.